Welcome to today's deep dive. May God bless your day and your week as we embark on today's journey together.
Thank you. It's great to be here for this one.
Yeah, today we're getting into something pretty wild. Imagine the most terrifying warrior of the ancient world. Like a guy who can just tear down heavily fortified city gates with his bare hands.
Right. Someone who can single-handedly take on entire armies,
Hmm,
just completely invincible on the battlefield.
exactly. But now imagine that same untouchable warrior being brought down not by, a sword or a rival army,
Mhm.
but by a haircut and a massive bribe.
It really is a crazy contrast.
It is. So today we are taking a magnifying glass to Judges chapter 16, and we're using extensive notes from two major study Bibles, the Holman Study Bible and the NAA Study Bible.
Which are both fantastic resources for getting into the actual historical context of this stuff.
Definitely. And our mission for you today is simple. We are stripping away that polished, sanitized Sunday school version of the Samson and Delilah story. We really want to dive into the gritty historical reality, the psychological warfare, and the theology of a man who had this immense physical strength but was ultimately destroyed by his own fatal moral weaknesses.
It really is the ultimate paradox, isn't it? I mean, when you read this text with a close eye on the context, the whole superhero veneer just fades away.
Yeah, it becomes a lot darker.
It does. What you are left with is this really tragic character study. It's not just a story about a strong man being tricked. It's a detailed account of a man who just repeatedly, arrogantly compromises his calling step by step until the whole foundation collapses.
So let's jump right into the mindset of this guy before Delilah even enters the picture. Because chapter 16 opens by establishing exactly where Samson is physically and spiritually. And it's not a good place. He goes down to Gaza.
Right. And Gaza isn't just a random stop on a road trip.
No, not at all.
In the ancient world, geography is often theology. Gaza is a major Philistine city, but more importantly, it is the absolute furthest Philistine stronghold from Israelite territory.
So he's putting as much physical distance between himself and his home and his calling as he possibly can.
Exactly. He is wandering deep into enemy territory, and his motivation for being there is just entirely base. The text says he visits a prostitute.
But hold on, I want to clarify something here. Because I know the Philistines had a really heavily pagan culture.
Yeah.
If she's a Philistine in a major city, wouldn't she be a temple prostitute, like part of the worship of their gods?
That is a really great question, and it's a crucial distinction. The Hebrew word used here is zona, which refers to a common secular prostitute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not a kadesha, which would be a cultic or temple prostitute dedicated to a pagan deity.
So why does the text point that out?
Well, the text is making a very deliberate point that Samson isn't engaging in some complex religious rebellion here. He isn't wrestling with theology or, being seduced by foreign gods.
It's just purely physical appetite.
Yes. He is casually indulging his primal desires with absolutely zero regard for his status as a Nazirite, which, remember, means he was a man supposed to be set apart and consecrated to God from birth.
So he's just completely ignoring who he is supposed to be. And of course, word gets out. The Philistines realize the great Israelite menace is sleeping in their city.
Right. They can't believe their luck.
So they quietly surround the city gate and set an ambush. They plan to kill him at dawn. But Samson wakes up at midnight,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of, sneaking out over the wall like a normal person,
With back exit, yeah.
instead he walks right up to the main city gate. And he doesn't pick the lock. He literally rips the massive Iron Age gate doors, the posts, and the locking bar straight out of the earth.
It's wild.
Puts them on his shoulders and carries them about 40 miles uphill to a mountain facing Hebron.
To really grasp the absurdity of this, you have to visualize an ancient Iron Age city gate. This wasn't some wooden garden fence.
Right.
These gates were the primary defense systems of major cities. We're talking thick doors reinforced with bronze or iron, heavy wooden crossbars, and stone posts sunk incredibly deep into the bedrock.
And usually flanked by guard towers too, right?
Exactly, multi-story guard towers. So Samson, dismantling this with his bare hands, is just a staggering display of brute force, and then carrying tons of wood and metal 40 miles uphill. It's unfathomable.
It's like a superhero using their incredible powers to do a late-night bar trick, just to show off to the locals.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
He's totally ignoring the fact that he's literally surrounded by assassins.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's unpack this. He carries these massive gates, 64 kilometers. What is the author trying to tell you and me about the contrast between his physical strength and his spiritual state.
Well, the underlying message is the sheer terrifying irony of his situation. Physically, the guy just cannot be contained. The Philistines lock him in the heavily fortified city, and he literally walks away carrying the lock.
He literally took the door with him.
Exactly. Nobody can cage his muscles. But spiritually and psychologically, he is entirely captive. He has zero self-control. The author is brilliantly setting up this stark contrast. Samson can carry the massive gates of a city on his shoulders, but he is way too weak to carry the weight of his own calling.
Wow. And because he thinks he's untouchable, because he thinks his muscles are a get-out-of-jail-free card for all his terrible decisions, his thrill-seeking leads him straight into a trap he can't punch his way out of.
Right. The attack strategy against him has to shift.
Yeah, if you can't bind his muscles, you have to wear down his mind. Enter Delilah.
Yes. The narrative moves to the Sorek Valley, where Samson falls for Delilah. Now, keep in mind, this is his third disastrous involvement with a Philistine woman.
He really has a severe pattern here.
He does. He consistently seeks out the very people he is supposed to be delivering Israel from. But beyond his bad judgment, the linguistic details in this introduction are just pure poetry.
Oh, share that, because I love the language context here.
So, Samson's name is derived from the Hebrew word for son. And Delilah's name sounds incredibly close to the Hebrew word for night, which is Lila.
Oh, wow. The sun and the night. That is haunting.
It really is.
It's like the author's telling you right off the bat that the sun is about to set on this guy.
Exactly. The light is fading. The night is about to swallow the sun.
But here's where it gets really interesting for me. Was this ever really a love story? Because this isn't just some poetic, star-crossed romance. It's a highly funded, coordinated assassination plot.
Oh, absolutely.
As soon as Delilah is in the picture, the 5 rulers of the Philistines approach her with an offer. They want to know the secret to his great strength, and they each offer her 1,100 pieces of silver. So that's 5,500 pieces of silver total. What does that kind of money actually mean in the ancient economy?
It is an astronomical, almost unimaginable sum of wealth. To put it in perspective for you, ancient economic records show that the standard price for a slave during this era was only 30 pieces of silver.
Wait, 30 pieces of silver for a human life, and they were offering her 5,500. That's not just a bribe. That's like the GDP of a small town. That kind of money buys you estates, private armies, and total independence for the rest of your life.
Precisely. Delilah's motivation is crystal clear here. She is securing an empire for herself.
Which really makes you question Samson's mindset. Was he just addicted to the thrill of sleeping with the enemy? I mean, completely oblivious to the massive bounty on his head.
He really seems to be.
Because she literally starts interrogating him about how to tie him up and make him weak. How does a person not see that as a massive red flag?
This gets to the core of Samson's psychology. He has this massive invincibility complex. He has played with fire his entire life and has never once been burned.
Right.
So he doesn't view Delilah as a legitimate threat. He views her as an amusement. He enjoys the danger. And that arrogance leads him directly into this deadly psychological game of truth and dare.
Right, because she asks him how he can be subdued, and he lies to her. But the lies he tells aren't just random deflections. They actually reveal how little respect he has for his own relationship with God.
They really do.
In his first lie, he tells her that if she ties him up with 7 fresh bowstrings, he'll become as weak as a normal man. Now, when you look at what ancient bowstrings were actually made of, which was animal tendons and intestines, you realize what he's actually doing.
Exactly. Part of his sacred Nazirite vow is a strict prohibition against touching dead bodies or carcasses.
So by telling her to tie him up with pieces of dead animals, he is casually inviting her to violate the very core of his religious consecration.
It's a joke to him. He's mocking his own sacred covenant.
So she ties him up, shouts that the Philistines are attacking, and of course he snaps the bowstrings easily. She complains that he made a fool of her, so he offers a second lie. He says, tie me up with brand new ropes that have never been used.
Which is fascinating because that is the exact same failed strategy that his own people, the men of Judah, used on him back in chapter 15.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he is literally repeating history using a recycled tactic to mock the Philistines. He's showing off how little he cares.
But then we get to the third lie. And this is where the tension just ratchets up, because he stops playing with outside objects and brings it right to his own body.
He gets dangerously close to the truth.
Yeah. He tells her that if she weaves the 7 braids of his hair into the fabric on a heavy loom and pins it tight, he'll lose his strength. He is literally bringing his hair, the ultimate physical symbol of his vow to God, into this twisted game.
And the tension here becomes unbearable for an ancient reader because of a massive literary parallel. Think about the imagery for a second. A deadly, deceptive woman standing over a sleeping warrior, doing something to his head with a heavy wooden peg or pin.
Oh, man. Jael and Sisera from earlier in the book of Judges.
Precisely. Any ancient Israelite hearing this story would instantly feel a sense of dread.
Because earlier in Judges, Jael offered hospitality to the enemy general, Sisera.
Right, and when he fell asleep, she drove a tent peg straight through his skull.
So the imagery of Delilah pinning Samson's hair with a heavy wooden loom peg while he sleeps, it's a massive flashing red warning sign. The reader sees the impending doom perfectly, but Samson is entirely blind to it. It's practically worse than yelling at the screen during a horror movie. You are practically shouting at him to get out of the house. But at least the characters in a horror movie don't know the killer is in the house. Samson knows.
He absolutely knows.
Every time she tries one of these tricks, actual Philistine assassins jump out of the bedroom. Why doesn't he see the trap? Why does he play this deadly game of getting closer and closer to the actual truth of his hair?
Because he fundamentally misunderstands the source of his own power. He has lived his entire life without consequences, so he believes his strength is just an inherent physical possession that belongs to him.
Like it's just his genetics or something.
Exactly. He's playing a game of chicken with his divine calling, seeing how close he can get to the edge without falling over. He doesn't realize the edge is already crumbling beneath his feet.
And eventually, he falls. Delilah shifts from tricks to just relentless emotional attrition. The text says she nags him daily until his soul is vexed to death.
She just wears him down.
Yeah. He finally breaks and tells the truth. If his head is shaved, his Nazirite vow is broken, and his strength will leave him. So she lulls him to sleep on her lap, brings in a man to shave off the 7 braids, and shouts, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson."
And this leads to what is arguably the most devastating, chilling line in the entire book of Judges.
Yeah, because he wakes up, and the text says he thought, "I will go out as at other times and shake myself free." But then it delivers the fatal blow. But he did not know that the Lord had left him.
That verse is just heartbreaking, and it completely dismantles the popular cartoonish misconception about Samson.
House.
While the hair itself held no magical power, it wasn't a potion or a spell. The hair was merely the outward physical symbol of his internal covenant with God. His immense physical strength was entirely dependent on the active presence of God's Spirit.
Wow, okay.
So once the covenant was completely abandoned, the Spirit departed, and the strength vanished right along with it.
So what does this all mean? It's the ultimate emperor has no clothes moment. It's like a deep-sea diver whose oxygen line is quietly cut on the surface. He wakes up, stretches, and thinks he can just keep swimming like normal, completely unaware that the very source keeping him alive is already gone.
That's a great analogy.
And the text uses a specific Hebrew word there, Pam, right?
Yes, Pam. It means a recurring beat, like an anvil strike. He thought this was just another beat in his rhythm of easy victories.
But the music had stopped, and the consequences are immediate and brutal. The Philistines capture him, and the very first thing they do is gouge out his eyes.
Which is just viscerally horrifying.
It is. It's so dark.
It is, but we really have to understand it within the historical context of the ancient Near East.
Okay, what do the sources say about that?
Ancient administrative texts from the 14th century BC, specifically Hittite records from a city called Topeka, confirm that blinding was a very common systemic practice for subjugating powerful enemies.
So it wasn't just random cruelty.
No, it served a very specific dual purpose. It permanently incapacitated them militarily, ensuring they could never lead an army or fight again. And it humiliated them utterly, reducing a great warrior to a state of absolute helplessness.
So they blind him, bind him in heavy bronze chains, and drag him back to Gaza, which, ironically, is the very city where he once ripped the gates out of the ground.
Full circle.
Yeah. And now he's put to work in the prison, turning a massive heavy millstone to grind grain like a work animal. It is an absolute catastrophic fall from grace.
Which brings us to the final act of his life set in the Temple of Dagon. This is where we transition from Samson's absolute lowest point to a climax that is dripping with both divine grace and just deep cutting irony.
So the Philistines decide to throw a massive festival to offer a great sacrifice to their god, Dagon, and to celebrate the capture of their greatest enemy.
And here is where you have to appreciate the profound irony of ancient pantheons. Dagon is primarily an agricultural deity. He's a grain god.
Okay.
If you look back earlier in Samson's life, One of his most famous exploits was destroying the Philistines' grain fields by tying torches to the tails of foxes.
Oh, right. I remember that.
So now, the man who arrogantly burned their crops is blinded, shackled, and forced to literally grind their grain in the prison. They have turned him into a living, breathing trophy to glorify the grain god's supposed victory over the God of Israel.
It's the ultimate psychological torture.
Yeah.
But amidst all this darkness, the text drops in this tiny glimmer of hope. It casually mentions that his hair had begun to grow back.
Yes, the symbol of the covenant is slowly returning. It shows that God's grace is subtly moving in the background, even in a Philistine prison. God has not completely abandoned the mission, even if the man is broken.
So, wanting to mock him further, they bring Samson out of the prison to entertain the crowd. And they place him right between the main central pillars of the temple. And I really want to pause here because the architectural details described in the text are fascinatingly precise when you compare them to modern archaeology.
They really are.
How exactly does a guy pushing 2 pillars bring down an entire massive temple?
It is remarkably accurate to the history. Excavations at a Philistine archaeological site called Tel Khazil have revealed exactly how these temples were engineered.
Oh, Tel Khazil.
Yeah. They weren't built with modern steel framing, obviously. They featured massive, heavy roofs made of timber and mud brick, which were supported by central cedar wood pillars.
Sounds heavy.
Incredibly heavy.
Oh, look.
But crucially, these cedar pillars didn't go deep into the ground. They actually rested flat on top of solid, carved stone bases to prevent the wood from rotting.
Wait, they were just sitting on top of the stones.
Exactly. The architecture required the pillars to be relatively close together to support the main load of the roof beams. So when the boy guides the blinded Samson to rest his hands on those 2 central pillars, he is touching the literal linchpins of the entire structure.
Oh, wow.
If you push those pillars laterally, they slide right off their stone bases, the roof loses its central support, and you get a catastrophic, cascading collapse.
Okay, so picture this. He's standing there, hands on the pillars. Above him on the roof are 3,000 men and women, including all 5 rulers of the Philistines, looking down, laughing at him. And Samson prays. He says, "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes."
And this is where we really have to stop and analyze his motivation. The word remember in the Old Testament is powerful. It doesn't just mean recalling a memory. It means intervening and acting on someone's behalf. But pay very close attention to why he wants God to act.
Yeah, I honestly really struggle with this part. Wait, let's look closely at that final prayer. He isn't praying for Israel's freedom.
No, he isn't.
He explicitly asks for personal payback for his gouged out eyes. How should you and I reconcile this deeply selfish motivation with the fact that God actually answers the prayer?
It is a profoundly difficult, messy theological tension. And it's one that we really shouldn't try to sanitize. Samson is a highly flawed, deeply negative example of virtue. His story isn't a triumphant hero's journey. It marks a transition into deeper moral decay for the entire nation of Israel. Even at the very end of his life, standing in the temple, his motives are still entirely wrapped up in his own ego. He wants vengeance for himself.
But God still grants him the strength. He actually validates the prayer of a guy who is entirely focused on his own revenge.
He does, but not because Samson's motives are pure. God grants the strength because God's sovereign purposes are just bigger than Samson's massive flaws. Before Samson was even born, an angel prophesied that he would begin to deliver Israel from the hand of the Philistines.
Right, the prophets.
God uses this broken, vindictive, impulsive man to fulfill that prophecy. It's a sobering reminder that God can and does use deeply imperfect vessels to accomplish history.
So, fueled by that restored strength, Samson pushes the cedar pillars off their stone bases. The roof collapses in a massive avalanche of stone and timber, killing the 3,000 people on top, the rulers, and Samson himself. The text leaves us with the grim statistic that he killed more people in his death than he did in his entire life. He judged Israel for 20 years, but his legacy ends buried in rubble.
It is a breathtaking and tragic conclusion. When you pull all these historical, linguistic, and psychological threads together, it becomes glaringly obvious that this isn't just a fun action-adventure story for kids.
Not at all. It is a really dark, profound, cautionary tale. It's about the danger of an invincibility complex, the illusion of self-reliance, and the absolute tragedy of wasted potential.
Right.
God's grace was still there. We saw the hair grow back. We saw God answer the final prayer.
Right.
But because Samson refused to conquer his own impulses, his divine mission ended as a violent suicide mission. He didn't lead his people into an era of peace and constructive leadership. He saved Israel, but he completely destroyed himself in the process.
Exactly. He could conquer armies, he could tear up city gates, but he couldn't establish a single boundary in his own mind.
It really forces you to take a hard look in the mirror. It's so easy to look at Samson and judge his massive, glaring mistakes. But human nature hasn't changed. We still test boundaries. We still think we are the exception to the rule. So I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over today as you go about your week. If the physically strongest man in history was brought down entirely by his own internal lack of boundaries, what are the small compromises you're ignoring in your own life right now because you think you're strong enough to handle them? Thank you for joining us. God blesses all the listeners.